Hey, this is head coach Clemente Bonilla, CVCS Baseball Podcast. So excited to begin our episode 6. We've had great guests coming into these episodes. The first 5 have been a blast, and we've had a couple weeks off here with the Thanksgiving break, and now we're back with a special guest all the way, flew in from Pennsylvania. He's the head coach at Messiah University, my good friend Phil Shallenberger. Phil, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, so excited, man, that you were able to come in. We had a great practice yesterday, and then we're scrimmaging San Juan Hills High School today, and I think you'll get a chance to see, on both sides of the dugout, some pretty good athletes and ball players. But before we even get into that, I just, again, thank you for coming out, and I want to just get a little bit of your history. I know you and I have been friends for a little while, but before we go into the college recruiting and how we met, just love to hear more about how where did you play high school baseball? Where did you play your college ball? And how did you ultimately get started with coaching?
Yeah, so I grew up, I coach in Pennsylvania now, but I also grew up in Pennsylvania, Western PA guy. And I think the reason that's significant, because usually when you grew up in Western PA, football is kind of the big deal. That's where guys like Joe Namath and Dan Marino and quarterbacks, some of the best NFL players have come from. And baseball is always kind of secondary there. But for me, I played football for a couple of years, but just didn't love getting hit every day. And baseball for me was just something that I don't know what it was, but just grew up loving. And played high school baseball at a really like a small town rural school, Apollo Ridge, and ended up we actually had a really good team that year where we had 4 or 5 guys go play college baseball, and I was one of them, and it started my career. I'll keep it a little shorter, but how I got there, but ended up at a small Christian college, Geneva College, NAI school at the time, was a place that gave me an athletic scholarship. So I felt like that was where I was supposed to go, and ended up playing for an NAI team that won the conference that year, and spent all 4 years there, where eventually graduated, didn't really know what the next step was, had an offer to play overseas, and got kind of had other plans. I got injured and ended up making it to play over there, and ended up coming back to Geneva as an assistant coach for 3 years, 2 of those being a graduate assistant. And every time I actually tried to get out of coaching, it felt like a guy was just kind of pulling me back into it. I went to Cairn University, where I was kind of like, you know what, I think I'm going to give baseball a break. Ended up working in student affairs. The head coach at the time knew I played baseball. The team was actually really bad. I think most wins they had ever had at that point was 8 out of 40, 8 and 40,
Okay.
8 and 30 something. So, and he asked if I'd help out, and I said, sure, I'll help out, but I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. And basically, I'll show up to practices and games when I'm able to. And that was actually where my passion was kind of rekindled. Ended up going down to Nashville, kind of similar story. I went there, I was like, maybe baseball isn't the route I'm supposed to take, and ended up getting a job down at Belmont University, and some doors open for me to actually coach with a Division I team while I was down there.
Ohio Valley Conference, baby.
That's right. SEMO, we got to play them a few times, ran into a juggernaut, Luke Casey, who ended up pitching for the Padres for a while. But so coached there for a year, and then ended up coming back to Cairn as the head coach. And now I'm at Messiah University as the head coach, heading into my 4th season at Messiah right now.
Well, thank you for sharing. That is really awesome. I didn't even know a little bit of that. But it's just so neat to hear the different guests we've had that coming into baseball as a player, coming into baseball as a coach, does not always have a direct path. There's a lot of zigzagging that goes on, and the thought process of it, and sometimes even thinking you're ready to come out of it, and then it draws you back in. And there's a lot of there's just a lot of God involved in these decisions. And how's your faith been to help you kind of go through these assistant then to the head jobs, and then ultimately what brought you to Messiah? I know you're a family man, Courtney, your wife, and then you have 2 beautiful sons. Just tell us a little bit about how faith has brought you to the head coach at Messiah, and also how you hold that together.
Yeah, we got to talk a little bit at breakfast too about this, but just my faith has honestly just this sense of trust of allowing God to guide like where I'm supposed to be going, in a sense where like I think every time I thought I was supposed to be out of baseball, partly because I think there was a sense, my human nature felt like that it was a selfish decision just because I wasn't ready to give up. And I was like holding on to this idea of being involved in baseball. And when really that's like God gives us certain passions and gifts for a reason, where when I was coaching or involved with baseball, I just really felt like that's where my skill set was. And I had this desire to also help young men grow in their faith. And for me, every step along the way, like everything like the world would tell you, hey, don't take this job, don't do this, don't take this job. And in fact, after I went to, I think the biggest part that I really saw God show up was when after I was at Cairn as an assistant, went to Nashville at Belmont University. And while I was there, the head coach had left and moved on, and they had reached out to see if I was interested. I was like, yeah, I'm interested, but at the time it wasn't a full-time job. It was leaving a full-time job that was paying decent in a city that we loved, and to come back, take a part-time job. And we just went through the interview process, prayed about it, and we said yes, as we felt like that's where we were being led. And then after we said yes, this is where the logical sense of taking a job comes in, but we kind of did it backwards, where we kind of calculated like, all right, how are we going to make ends meet? And we were pretty substantially in the hole. Like we didn't know how we were even going to make ends meet. Where there was just this sense of like, we really felt like this was God calling us. And sometimes what God is calling us to isn't necessarily what the world sees as the right choice. And for us, just having that trust that like, yeah, this is where God's leading us, we're going to go. And that's how like faith has been a big part. And then long story short, like left like a brief hiatus to help a travel ball program and potentially help start up a facility with this group. And I was in it for about 11 months. And then a school that we'd always had circled was Messiah. And that job opened up at the most inopportune time, where I felt like if it would have opened up a year prior, it would have been no question, right? Yeah. And where we're there, we had just moved, we haven't even unpacked our boxes yet, and kind of similar, where like we had just had our second kid, Ryder, our oldest is Rhett, and we hadn't even unpacked our boxes yet. And I told Courtney, like, she's about to start her first teaching job like that week, and that her new job, not her first one, but her new one in that area. And she told her about it, and she's like, I guess the timing just isn't right. And we started talking about it, and she came around. She's like, all right, well, just apply, and we'll see what happens, see if like God provides clarity through that. Next thing you know, I ended up getting the head coaching job at Messiah, and we took it. And again, we both just had to be on board and knew that, trusting that this was what God had in store for us.
That's crazy. You know, a biblical worldview, the logic or the math of things just isn't quite the same maybe as a secular worldview. Yeah, and that's a great example of it right there. You know, just having a leap of faith, and then it's really turned into an amazing run for you. Talk about last year. I'd love to just dive right into your experience from last year's team, and then what, you know, as a head coach in today's recruiting climate, like what brings a roster to its full potential? What are the dynamics of a roster with you and your coaching staff when you're out there recruiting in the world?
Yeah. Well, this last year we ended up heading into my third season. We ended up having a really great year this last year in terms of what happened on the field. There's a lot of really cool stories behind how a lot of this took place, but ended up 35-11 finishing the season in the coaches poll, number 24 in the country. And I was telling people that our peak was going to be actually this upcoming season, not last year. Mm-hmm. And I still hope that's the case, and I still think it's going to be in some regards, but did not think we were going to be a 35-win team last year. And what we saw in the transformation that took place with a team that hadn't made the playoffs for about 9 years before I came in, and losing in the play-in game the first 2 years, and then making the jump to be 19-2 in conference, pretty significantly made a huge jump in terms of our win-loss record in conference was just the leadership from the players. And people ask me, like, well, what was the one question that I was asked, like, what was the biggest turnaround? Like, how did that take place? And it was the investment that we put in leadership in our players. And we tell our players all the time, like, especially our leaders, like, and our captain, just like, we're only going to get as far as you take us as players. Like, I can only do so much, but what you guys do, you're around each other every day. You guys are the ones that make the difference. And now it's to the point where things are, like, they're taking care of stuff before I even think about it or before it ever even gets to my desk. And whether that's accountability or, hey, I think we should do this. And so this last year was just a really special season. We're kind of incorporating that faith piece. We went to the Dominican Republic and got to go down there as a team and played baseball games while also doing some mission work down there and sharing the gospel with people, but also getting to play really good baseball. And our guys, like, just found this sense of joy of playing the game of baseball. And we come back to that year, and just throughout the season, our focus wasn't on winning baseball games, but how can we, like, point people closer to Jesus? And through that, our guys found a sense of joy and an identity that was found in bigger than whether they got 4 hits in that game. And one of the things that we talk about now is just, as believers, we should actually be the most fearless athletes because we have nothing to lose in terms of on the field. We had the mental skills coach he was with the Texas Rangers when they won the World Series, and he did a session with us, a good friend of mine, Dave Franco. He said, like, that was exactly what he said. He said, as a Christian, like, if you're playing with fear, then that's your lack of belief in what God's actually done for us, where you should be the most fearless ones out there. There should be nothing that scares you or nothing that intimidates you. And so in the terms of the recruiting question of what we look for is guys that want to be a part of that, is like, do you want to come somewhere where you're going to be challenged, you're going to be pushed, but ultimately, like, are you going to care about your teammates and help them grow as a player and a person, even if that means, like, you may lose playing time. One of the most significant, like, our captain, actually, Jarrett Gordon, he's a senior this year, our team captain, and he was our starting shortstop my first 2 years at Messiah. And I had a really good freshman year, played like one of the best defensive shortstops in the conference, and then just really struggled his sophomore year. We joke about it with him, so if he listens to this, he'll laugh about it as well. Okay. But he struck out, like, I think 12 straight at bats, and at one point, and at the time we just didn't really know, like, we didn't have the depth to really switch that up. And at the end of the season, I told him, I said, hey, we have a couple really good players coming in, infielders, and one of the things is, like, Jarrett, you're a guy I pull for, and I want to be on the field, but at the same time, like, you're going to have to hit a little better if you want to stay on the field. And to his credit, he came back last year as a junior, always worked hard, always was prepared physically. But I think his mindset and what he told me, I was like, what changed for you? When I asked him at the end of last year, and he said, Coach, like, I started showing up to the field, like, working hard, but caring more about how can I serve my teammates than I did about my own stats. And to the point where a freshman who actually came from the same high school that he came from, he actually basically help him become a better player, which also meant that he ended up losing his shortstop position to this freshman last year. And so we moved him to second base. He platooned there for a while, the first 4 or 5 games, like 8 games of the season, and basically made himself the best hitter on our team, and to the point where we didn't have a choice but to play him.
That's awesome.
And so, like, that's what we look for, guys that want to come and compete against 2 or 3 guys to play, but not just compete and, like, hey, I'm going to beat you out, but, like, that they're going to make their teammate better and still want to beat them out because they're beating them when they're at their best too. And guys that we want and what we look for, and I know talent is obviously a part of that, but if you have talent but don't have, like, I guess, the grit or the desire to be around other people that are going to also raise your ceiling and your floor because they're playing at their best, then this probably isn't the program for you. But if you want to be surrounded with 2 or 3 other guys that are just as capable of a player as you are and are going to make you better, you're going to have to work hard to get on the field. And that's what we look for, guys that are going to work really hard but are also selfless enough to understand that they're helping everybody get better, not just themselves.
I love that story. And, it's just been a repeatable theme from episode 1 when we had Josh Randall speaking a little bit about his conference run and the conference tournament at USD before he ultimately got drafted, and that culture and the chemistry and the leadership and being, a part of something that's bigger than just yourself. We had Brian Rao, who was a Division III All-American 3 times at Chapman University, and they went to the World Series twice. And then you had guys like Skip Schumacher or Javier Lopez, who won Major League World Series championships with the Braves and the Cardinals, respectively. And so it's like no matter if it's college baseball at any one of the divisions all the way up to Major League Baseball, and I think this translates for honestly every level. It could even be Little League, junior high, high school.
For sure.
Something about championship, teams that make great runs, teams that seem to win consistently, put winning at the bottom of the list, and it's that ability to serve, ability to lead, and how that goes hand in hand, and just being part of a team and that team chemistry that's built. I think as head coaches, you and I can sort of crack the door open and kind of show them the way. But they really, like, if the team's going to do it, they got to lead themselves and serve themselves to do that. We can kind of only guide them to the door, but they got to walk through it. And it seems like you're just doing a great job with them, and we're just so excited. I hope that this year's even better. So you're out. You came all the way out here to California, obviously, not just to hang out with me. There's
that was part of it.
Yeah, that's part. It's always fun, but you're hoping to see some players. So when you or your staff are out looking, there's some intangibles you talked about. But what about some of the physical skill set stuff? Like what stands out to you? Let's say you've already checked in a little bit with their high school coaches or travel ball, or and just got hey, it's a good kid. Everybody says the grades are there, the respect is there, good family. So like the intangible stuff kind of fits, off the field stuff fits. What are you looking for skill set wise on the field that's going to be a standout for you?
Yeah, I think this is what makes recruiting such a roller coaster in terms of emotions around like coaches, players, families, is because every coach honestly probably looks for something slightly different. And it's about almost being at the right place at the right time, displaying the right skill set at the right time as well. Where I think that's what also makes baseball such a beautiful game. Where like in basketball, you can like, hey, a guy's 6'8", 6'9", like, yeah, you can work with that. Where baseball, like, look at guys like David Eckstein or Jose Altuve, who like don't have the physicality, but yet have this other skill set that coaches see, or I guess scouts see in those situations. So that's what makes this question alone makes what baseball is such a beautiful game. And I think for me is it does vary based off of what type of player that it is or what position he's playing. And for me, like as far as a hitter goes, it's like what I think we look for, and I think what has allowed us to be successful over the past couple years is we're not just looking for a game-ready player right away. And we have, I think, maybe the luxury at our level to do that in some extent. And we do have game-ready players that do come in. Like we had a couple freshmen start every game for us last year. But at the same time, like we have guys that's like, all right, there's the skill set that they have that's allowing them, like, man, in 1 year, like they put on 10 pounds, they're going to be like super like successful. And some of the things that I look for is an athleticism. Do they move well? Like, do they look like an athlete when they're running, when they're moving? Pitchers, like when they're pitching, not only can they like throw a good fastball, and like velo can change like throughout that, but can you locate multiple pitches? Can you field your positions well? And are you an athlete and adaptable when you're out there? And for us, like, I want to see somebody that has an ability to grow and has a ceiling that's much higher. And so I actually had a great conversation with one of our assistants the other day where he liked this one infielder who was a pretty good player. Like, honestly, he was a good player and probably was slightly more game ready than a player that we actually ended up offering, where the player we offered, if you look at it on paper in the moment, may not be quite as ready to play as this player heading into his senior year. But seeing the athleticism, multi-sport athlete, like there's going to be a lot of growth that takes place where this player may be pretty close to a ceiling, or this player still has, who knows, like how much growth that this player can have. And we ended up offering the latter of those two. And for me, like the intangibles are obviously a huge portion of that, like you talked about. And I think some of the intangibles that we can measure on the field too are how do you handle like giving up a run or a home run? What do you do in a pressure situation? One of the freshmen that pitched 78 innings for us last year and was our number 2 conference starter, there was a high school game I went to. The bases were loaded in the first inning of a state playoff game. And I think he gave up a hit. There was an error, and he walked a guy. Instead of kind of folding and backing down from like a pretty challenging and difficult moment, it was actually he elevated his game in that moment, where you could see that compete factor that was there. And he ended up striking out the side to get out of that first inning in a state playoff game, instead of just kind of like sulking and pouting because it wasn't going his way. And so like, while that can be seen as an intangible, I actually think you can actually measure that pretty well by seeing how they respond in tough moments. And we had this conversation about travel ball, and I think there's so many positives to that and to travel baseball and getting to see players as coaches. But I think one thing you lose sometime in those environments is teams that are playing for something, like a guy that's playing for something bigger than just himself. Or in high school, like you're competing with guys that like your teammates that you go to school with, and you're playing for something bigger. And there's a little bit more like on the line, I guess you could say, than going and just showcasing your skills at a travel ball tournament. And that's why I love seeing how guys compete in high school games and love getting out to like high school environments, because there's just something different about that environment than going and seeing summer ball games.
Yeah, most college coaches that I've spoken to, along with yourself, just seem like, they'll still use travel ball for what it is to see some skill set stuff, but that if you don't play for your high school team, there's still a really big red flag with that, because, even if you have the skill set stuff, like what would lead you to not be part of your team and of your high school and compete with your classmates, your teammates. But it sounds like, you're recruiting. There's a little bit of chess involved there, because you're making moves that lead to more moves and a thought process ahead, 2 or 3 moves ahead, that, hey, and this guy 18, 24 months from now with this, 10 pounds of weight and some real strength and conditioning programs and a little bit more of an approach, like this guy could be an All-American. Like you're making projections, which is always fun, especially when they pan out, right? But so tell me about, okay, so like we've got to that part where you've identified a player, you've now maybe began to build a relationship with them. You're calling them, you've talked to their parents, maybe you've brought them onto campus, and you've offered them, a package, a roster spot, whatnot, and now they're graduated high school and they're coming onto the fall at Messiah. What does that look like? The first freshman week, the first freshman semester for a kid that's coming into your program as a new baseball player?
Yeah. One of the things we communicate in the recruiting process is how, honestly, I think some people don't mention this, but like how uncomfortable and awkward your first couple weeks on campus are. I even from my perspective, when my parents dropped me off at school, I was like laying in bed, and I'm like, wait a second, like I'm living somewhere else other than home for the first time in 18 years. And it just kind of hit me like, I'm on my own now. And I just remember there being a weekend early on in the fall where like I wanted, like in my college career, I wanted to go home like for at least the weekend, or like I was just having a hard time at school, like just didn't feel like I was fitting in. And I remember my dad's like, I'll come get you, I'll pick you up, bring you home, but like you're going back on Monday. And he's like, and you're not coming back until like after, like till Thanksgiving at that point. And super grateful for that, because for me, like it's sometimes like right now in this world, there's this idea of instant gratification and everything at our fingertips that it's hard for us to be patient, myself included. Like it's hard for us to be patient. That includes your experience in college. It's hard for us to be patient in uncomfortable moments because we just don't like being uncomfortable. And what I really encourage guys is to stick out like your first year, no matter what's happening. And I'm not saying that every situation says for the same thing, but if you don't give it at least a year, you're not giving yourself enough time to really see if is this just like a difficult couple months, or is this actually going to be a difficult experience for 4 years that's not going to be fruitful for me. To the extent where one of our players, his freshman year, was like struggling a little bit in the classroom, was having a hard time figuring out like how to study habits and had to work really hard to get decent grades. Got to a point where he was talking with his mom, and he was just like, I think I want to come home. And his mom was like, well, you're giving it at least a year, and made him stay for the whole year after Christmas break, and goes back. Ends up breaking into the starting lineup his freshman year, comes in, and so much so where he ended up getting pushed up to the 2-hole pretty quickly as a freshman. Actually ended up like breaking his wrist pretty significantly later that year, missed his whole season, the rest of the season at that point. But still to this day, like started for us last year as a sophomore, and is right now slated to be our starting outfielder right now. And that doesn't happen though if he goes home after his first semester. And now he loves it, and he would consider this family and brothers, and it's awesome to see like what that happens, but it doesn't happen unless you're willing to work through some uncomfortableness of going to college and that awkward stage where I know it's a common saying, but it's just like get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So like I think that's one of the things that I tell all of our incoming guys. It's like, hey, like this isn't going to be easy. It's not going to be like a walk in the park for everybody, or just like it's going to feel normal right away. It's going to take some time.
Definitely. And like you said, it's not so cut and dry where 100% for 100 out of 100 times or cases it's exactly that way. But I would say a majority, 85, 90% of the time, that really is the best advice for most cases is, give yourself 2, even 3 semesters. That's a sample size that you could work with. 2-3 weeks or even 2 or 3 months. It's just not a big enough sample size to really know. Yeah. And you talked a little bit about your personal experience. Same thing. I think coming out of Orange County, California, I don't think Southeast Missouri State was my dream school when I was a freshman or sophomore, but it became my dream school. Especially looking back on it, a lot of it had to do with the dream coaching staff that I had. I just had such a wonderful time being around those guys. Then my teammates, what a dream, and then everything else came together, the school part of it, the social part of it, the breathing in the experience of being in the Midwest for the first time. All that stuff would not have happened if when I came home Christmas break and told my mom and dad, it got really cold really fast. I don't know if I made the right choice. Maybe I should come back to California. And they were like, hey, listen, if you really need to come back to California, we'll explore that. But that's going to be after a full year. You're not coming home at the break.
For sure.
And then the rest was history. I had a wonderful career. So I think that it's just generally a good advice to just say, hey, give yourself a little bit more time to really get dialed in because especially that first season being with the boys on the team and being around great coaches, it could just be a game changer for you. And you will never know, you just won't know if you take off after a few weeks. But again, not exactly 100%, but
sure.
Just a high percentage, right? Yeah. So give us now we're deep into the fall. And you got inter squads, you got practices, you're working all kinds of things, and you have 40+ guys, and you're gonna have to narrow that down a little bit for the travel roster coming up in the spring, and just how does that work? You start to kind of figure out who your impact bats are, who your impact arms are, but this is a long season, and you're gonna have to use a lot of guys in different spots, not always high leverage. Different guys are gonna have to contribute. How do you and your staff start to identify what roles are going to take place and how people are going to contribute, even if they're not quote unquote the starter or the main impact arm or bat.
This is what makes being a head coach really fun. Is you're not just worried about the 9 to 10 guys that are playing on the field that day, but also what everybody in that dugout is contributing to. Where one of the I've talked about the floor ceiling piece is already, but we want to continue to raise our floor, not necessarily always our ceiling, where if our floor is raised, most likely our ceiling is going to keep growing. And I think that's what our guys have really grasped onto and understand, that the better I get, even if that doesn't mean I'm on the field right away, I'm making that person in front of me better, because he can't just like rest in being okay or being average or just being where he was, because he knows somebody else is also pushing him. But for us as a coaching staff, one of the things that we do is we identify how they go about their work every day. It's not just, oh, you had a really good day in this inner squad and had a couple hits, but was that like a consistency piece where for us, like we want to make sure that we can put guys on the field that are going to be consistent, and we're going to kind of have an idea of what we're going to get, and it's not just going to be a boom or bust type of day for that player. Where for us, it's I've had conversations with guys of, hey, like you had a good day at the plate like yesterday, but also like I've seen some of the worst BP rounds out of you in the last week, where kind of your inconsistency in the work that you've put in is also going to result in inconsistent results as well. Where, you might have a good day, but you're also going to have your bad days more often than some of the other guys that are a little bit more consistent in their effort and their consistent work every day, where like consistency is what provides your success. And it's the consistency that you put in every single day in the weight room, your batting practice rounds. Do you have a purpose with the swings that you're taking? I think there's so many guys that just walk up into get their swings in at batting practice or pregame or whatever that is, where it's just like, I'm just up here like swinging and trying to hit a baseball with no purpose, and not everybody's purpose is going to be the same. Like everybody has a different purpose. So that's number one, is like we're looking at the consistency of your effort and work that you put in every day. And there are guys that do put in a ton of work and effort it may not be paying off for them yet, but that doesn't mean it's not going to. But it is like we have to evaluate the talent piece, and do you come up in clutch spots in games too? But also it's like, if you're inconsistent in practice, how can we trust that you're going to be consistent in games? And so that's the first thing that we look for. And second is just like, part of that comes with some of these guys don't get the same opportunities that other guys get all the time in like our scrimmages, or necessarily like our first like non-conference games early in the year. But they may get 3 or 4 at bats, but may not get 10 to 12. And one of the things when guys come and talk to me, which we really want to create a safe space for them to come ask, like, hey, what is it that I need to do, or where am I at right now? And we try to be fully transparent with them with that. Where some guys like coach, like I'm just not getting enough reps like in game, and I was like, well, what are you doing with the couple reps that you're getting? And one of the stories that I love is, and I read in an article about Tom Brady when he was at Michigan, and he wasn't the starting quarterback yet, and he was getting like 2 or 3 reps with like the first teamers, and he's like, like how can I prove myself if I'm not getting enough reps with the first team? He like went and talked to the coach. He's like, I think about leaving, and the coach is like, hey, I think you should go talk to like our sports psychologist. And I guess he was challenged in a way that's like, well, what are you doing with those 2 to 3 reps? Are you treating those as like your Super Bowl? Are you treating those as you are the starting quarterback? Because if you can't be trusted with 2 or 3 reps, how are you going to be trusted with being the starting quarterback? And I think that's what guys have to start understand. If even though you only got 2 at bats, but you struck out on 6 straight pitches, like 3 straight pitches in both at bats, then why should you deserve more? And I think that's where guys need to understand too. Is that what are you doing with what you're given, while also making your teammates better in that, and being selfless and showing up to the ballpark every day knowing that like, hey, like it's not just about me, and everybody wants to play. I would actually be concerned if we had players that were like, I'm okay with sitting the bench. Right. Like they probably shouldn't be playing at this point, like at all. And for me, like we want guys that are taking advantage of every rep they get. And sometimes that means like a pinch running opportunity. It's like, what are you doing with that? We have we had a freshman who never got, I don't know if he got in a bat all year, but we put him in a big conference game to pinch run late in the game. I already used quite a few guys. Pinch ran at first base and ends up, we run a first and third play, and we end up scoring the winning run because of something that he did on the base pass. We could trust him in not just any moment, but like a pretty big moment that he did his job and was ready for it, and ends up being able to then we're like, yeah, we can trust him with more opportunities now because we could trust him with the one that we gave him there. And I think that's like the second thing is our guys taking advantage of the opportunities that they get and the consistency and effort they put in the inner squads and the at-bats they get throughout the fall.
Well, it's back to that word consistency, whether you're getting 1 to 3 reps or you're getting a dozen, and maybe it's off the machine, maybe it's an inner squad. Mm-hmm. But are you getting that bunt down? Are you getting that runner over? Are you reading the ball in the dirt and being aggressive when you're supposed to, or tagging up and freezing and just all the intangibles or small details that you can count on? Because when the high leverage moments, the big impact moments occur in a game, we're as humans probably going to revert back to our normal habits, like whatever we do consistently. And if we are always inconsistently working at our swing or working on our defense, then when we're in the biggest moment, we're probably going to revert back to that. Yep. And so as coaches, it's like, we can't trust you even if it is only 2 or 3 reps, I just don't see consistency there. Mm-hmm. Now, if they start to show that, we see things, coaches keep that stuff in the back of our heads, and we start to think, hey, here comes a big moment where we do need a bunt down or we do need a stolen base. And I've been noticing in these machine pitch or inner squads or whatever we're doing, that like this guy seems to have a good feel for these moments, and his habits and his consistency is appropriate. Let's put him in, and he does something great, and now you're like, I'm going to put him in again.
Exactly.
And then you never know. Somebody rolls an ankle or something off the field, and all of a sudden you got a guy who's starting who hadn't played the first 12 to 15, 18 games. And then, ends up being an all-conference player or something. And, like, everybody has to have a little bit of patience and take those reps. I love that Tom Brady story. I've heard on social media him talk about that as well. And it's just so – it's such a prime example of somebody who wasn't taken as seriously as he probably should have been, or there was also just great, talented people ahead of him at the time, but he just fought his way to prove that. I mean, he's got to be the best, if not the best of all time. Mm-hmm. So it's just, and Michael Jordan will talk about getting, not put on varsity as a sophomore. Everybody wants to be on varsity right away. Everybody wants us to be in the starting lineup. But, our programs are growing. Messiah, although you had a couple impact freshmen, a lot of freshmen at most colleges, including Messiah or any division level, they're going to probably have to be patient before they just break into the lineup, right?
Especially now with the landscape of it, right? Like a lot of these schools are using transfer portal to bring in guys that are game ready, and for like that just takes away roster spots on lower spots. But like it means that like even this year, like we're going to have really good players that can compete at the college level who are still behind somebody that's a little bit better than them right now. And the patience piece is huge, but like, I mean, and you talked about the standard, even at practice yesterday, of running first and third like drills that you guys were doing. It's just how can you expect to run this appropriately in the game if you can't do it right now when there's no pressure and there's nothing on the line, like other than me telling you you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And I one of your former players, Josh, that was there last night, just even mentioned like this: the standard is the standard that you make it, and like being from a Pittsburgh guy, and it's plastered all over the walls in the Steelers locker rooms and stuff. But the standard is the standard. It's not what other teams are doing, but the standard is our standard, and you might not be meeting that standard right now. And in practice, it means you're probably not going to meet that standard in the game either. And like the standard is not just how you do it in the game, but it's like how we do it every single day.
Mm-hmm. We're going to revert back to the habits and the consistency. What I love is that, when it's all said and done, yes, you want high velo, you want skill set, you want power, you want tools, and you also, the kids need to have a certain expectation in the classroom with their grades and academics. But what I really like is you want to surround yourself with really good young men, and you want to just continue to help them grow, not only in their baseball careers, but in their life skills and just growing as young men. And that you told me something that resonated with me last night when we were talking at dinner. The guys on your team, you would trust them to hang out with Rhett, and hang out with Ryder and just, you have a beautiful family at home, and you will open up your home to some of these guys, and they'll come over and they'll be in the basement, and that just that means a lot. I love that. You kind of have that atmosphere and that trust with your guys. You showed me videos of Rhett, what a beautiful little swing that he's got. He's 6 years old, and you were telling the guys are great with him. So character means a lot to you, right? What is an example of a time where, and I know this is not the most fun thing to talk about, but where that character has been compromised, and you really have to do, you have to make some decisions as a coach, either a learning moment or on occasions addition by subtraction and let somebody go. Tell me how you've maneuvered that, and how the communication piece and how you even continue to help somebody grow once they're not even in your program anymore.
Sure. Yeah, and I think I have to ask myself that question a lot too, is am I doing this, am I caring about these guys because I think me caring about them is going to get a result on the field. And truthfully, I don't, that's not where I want my heart to be. And I would genuinely love doing this because I get the privilege and the opportunity to see guys just continue to grow. And the day before I flew out here, actually had a freshman come ask me if he could just sit down and talk with me. And I'm like, what's going on? And he just wanted to talk to me about he's thinking about making the decision to be baptized. And it was just that was a reminder of why I do this, right? Yeah. And it's just so cool to see that. But that doesn't come without also its challenges and working through difficult situations. And I just want to say this starting out too, of with that question of if I wasn't shown grace and love throughout my time in my life, and especially at a younger age between 17 and 23, I wouldn't be where I'm at today either, where there were mistakes that I made that I just remember there being a point where I looked at my coach in the middle of a game and yelled at him saying that he was making decisions that weren't in front of the whole team, as a senior. And realizing later that day, that night driving back on the bus, I was in the wrong, and went to his office to apologize the next day, and we talked it through, and he forgave me before I even really got a word out of my mouth. And so I'm not where I'm at today if it wasn't for people that showed me grace. And same thing with players, they're 18 to 22-year-olds living on their own for the first time, being influenced by each other, and there's going to be things that take place that you're we probably shouldn't have made that decision there. Some bigger than others. And honestly, my first recruiting class at Messiah, they got into some off-the-field issues, and we ended up suspending the entire freshman class for our fall games we had that year. And not because I'm just no, we're just going to punish you because you made a mistake, but understanding that their decisions do impact others. And their decisions, and this is early on before we had a ton of depth, impacted what product we were putting on the field that day. But also just understand the journey with that wasn't hey, this is one day, right? This is not you guys, this isn't going to define who you are. This is just a part of that process and a part of that journey for you to learn and grow from. And the awesome thing about that is that these guys are now entering into their junior year. And one of the guys won Conference Player of the Year last year, and is turning into a leader. We have a couple other guys that are leaders on this team in that class who have grown from that opportunity to grow, learn from a mistake. But in the midst of that, didn't mean all of them were great. There was one player that we just it just seemed like he wasn't willing to own up or accept in those moments, where he was in the wrong, and it was a detriment to our team. And I saw the toll it was taking on some of our leaders that were trying to help him and exhausting them in a way that took away from where they could be pouring into others. Or we did make the decision to remove somebody from our team. And that honestly, that was one of the toughest things I've ever had to do as a coach, because I I think that we have an opportunity in a community as a baseball team to help each other, hold each other accountable, where I don't like removing guys from that because that takes away a whole group of family that loves them and cares about them. But also I had to ask myself, is this hurting 40-plus guys more than it's helping him?
Right.
And that's when I had finally made a decision to do that. But in the midst of that, we still met several times for lunch after that. We still were able to have conversations. And the awesome part is I've seen growth in that person and he's still at Messiah as a student, doing really well academically and still hanging out with our guys and growing. And that was a lesson for me to learn, that sometimes one of the hardest things to do is maybe one of the best things that can happen for somebody. Just the realization of maybe where their faults are or the things they need to grow in. And this is me making these decisions, and I think sometimes it's challenging because I know I'm imperfect. I know there's things that I'm still working and growing on. And but yeah, it's a tough thing where I think now and we're getting to a point where we are attracting players who want to be a part of what we're doing more so, or we don't run into that as much, but it doesn't mean that it's perfect. But there are a lot of things that we're growing from in that situation to find ways to help guys get to that point. But we're still at a point where guys are growing every day.
Yeah. Oh, I love hearing that story. I mean, the whole freshman class getting suspended for the exhibition fall games doesn't sound that unfamiliar to me. Just yesterday at practice, you noticed we were missing about 11 players. They were all sophomores that were here with our JV coach doing some community cleanup work for the campus because a few people made some choices, and it impacts the entire class. And I like how you said that it's an opportunity, and that's really what it is. And hopefully those guys will grow from it, and someday they're going to be seniors and leaders, and then they're going to be hopefully going to guys like you. And these experiences they've had are going to make them just a little bit more prepared to handle the next levels.
Yeah.
So what, give us I know it's way more intricate than this, but we're starting to get a little bit closer to our time here, and I want to hear the pitch. I'm from California. All these guys are out here. Why would we go to the mid-southern part of Pennsylvania and fly into Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia and drive an hour and a half to experience college at Messiah and to play for your baseball program?
Yeah, I always ask myself that too. Why is a guy going to want to come from California to come out and play for us? And I do think what does make us different is that there is this investment in who they are becoming in their faith, not just as a baseball player, and our ability to help guys in our team, not just me, but our team that helps each other understand that how it intertwines our faith in baseball, what that looks like, where if you want to be at a school where you're going to grow in your faith, but not sacrificing that pursuit of excellence on a baseball field, because we believe that that's where we've been gifted and what we have an opportunity to do, that we get to keep pursuing that excellence to hopefully point people closer to God in that way. And that's what makes us different, where we get to show up with a sense of joy and every day, and that was one of the pillars we added this year. We have 5 different pillars that we have, but 2 that we added this year were this idea of just surrendering the results and being more focused on the journey, which then instills that joy that we get to play with. I think there's just so much pressure that's put on student athletes today because of getting to see oh, my buddy committed here, this guy committed there, I got to get a scholarship, I have to go play here, I have to do this on a baseball field, I have to 10 home runs during the course of a season because this guy did it, where I think there's just so much pressure put on something that was meant to be fun and enjoyable, that it doesn't mean there isn't this work ethic and this pursuit of excellence amidst that. But if you're not enjoying it and showing up to the field every day with joy, then why are we doing it? And I think that is what makes us different, where you're going to be at a place that does care about you more as a person than just a player, and a place that we're trying to reinstill that joy that you get to play with every single day. And that's why I would like say, like, you mentioned my kids earlier, like Rhett and Ryder, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old boy, where like I envision myself like sending them off to college one day, and maybe they will come play for me, maybe they won't, but whatever that looks like, if they do even like baseball, they could be in something completely else that I don't like at all, and that would be awesome. But I would want to send my boys to I'm working to be a coach that I would want to send my boys to go play for, because I know as parents, like raising my kids, like it's 18 years of their life that we're invested in and helping them grow to become better men, where that's like we just want to be an extension of that once they come to college, where they're not done developing. In fact, like sometimes college is the most like developmental time they have, and where for us, like that's what makes a difference. Like you're going to come to a place that's going to care about you more as a person than just a player, and get to compete at a high level and compete nationally. And having 40-plus national titles as an athletic department since 2000 is a pretty cool thing. And but we're doing that without finding our identity and winning those trophies. But they just are a result of that.
19-2 in conference last year, just a product of the other intangibles. That's so cool. And if anyone, you guys that are listening to this podcast, the young guys out there that are still trying to get recruited and are making decisions on where they want to go, both of us have talked about just going out to out of state for the experience, also to play for great men who are going to have a positive impact and influence on your life. I could tell you guys, knowing Coach Phil for almost a decade now, this is the real thing. He is just a great baseball mind, but just such a great heart for not only the game, but for the kids and the individuals themselves. And that going to play for him would just be a wonderful experience. And I know that there's other things that you got to look at, and I would always say visit a campus and get to see some of the life, meet some of the guys. But you're going to be around these coaches for 3-4 years, maybe 5 years sometimes. And you want to be around good men, and vice versa. They want to be around good people because it's a symbiotic relationship. And I could tell you firsthand, he's recruited several players out of CVCS over the years when he was at Cairn and at Messiah. But one story in particular, Logan Hall, who's a left-handed pitcher for us, would have been a grad of 2018, left-handed pitcher in the high 70s, low 80s, still some baby body fat on him a little bit, and he could really project. You saw that he was a strike thrower with 3 pitches, and that you could see 4, 5, 6 miles an hour coming when he was 21 years old, and just there was something great that you saw in him, and him and his family were just so excited to commit to you to play college. And of course we know, but some of the listeners might not know, he pitched in the Anaheim Lions tournament on a Saturday, threw 6 innings on 1 hit. What a beautiful outing. And then late Sunday night or into early Monday morning, he passed away in his bed at home because of a heart condition. And it was just so obviously very difficult to go through as a coach, as a team that year. But just alongside one of your recruits, he would have been a freshman for you the next year. Just so beautiful how you came alongside us as a CVCS baseball program. And how you came alongside the Halls, and then you flew them out there. You had a jersey for them. Just a little bit. Again, I don't want us to go in a morbid direction because it is a sad story, but there are some positives that have happened from that, a lot actually, and just getting to know you and just seeing how you handled that. The Halls flew out there, and you guys had them throw the first pitch. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
So how was that?
I mean. As when you go through situations like that, there's no instruction manual on how to navigate all of that. Nope. And being that it was obviously the first time and hopefully the last time that something like that ever happens, I remember being shooken up by it, talking to my wife about it, and just having a phone conversation with him where we had picked a date for him to come out and visit us on campus, and just Logan was such a joyful, energetic, fun guy to be around and talk with, that I was excited for that, and to get to know him more and to have him come potentially play for 4 years is there's no roadmap to that. And especially for the halls, like what did that look like? And for us, like when I was talking with the parents a little bit, they're like, Logan's dream was to go and play college baseball.
It certainly was.
And for us, like for me, I wanted to make sure they knew that was something that was going to happen for him. And remember writing a letter to them and sending it along with the signing form for him to come to Cairn and being like, hey, this is him knowing that he was going to be a part of our team and always will be, even though he didn't step foot on campus, was incredible. Who Logan was as a person permeated to who like our team became because of who he was, even without interacting with a lot of our guys. And our guys were impacted. Where that day where they came out, threw out the first pitch, our PA announcer, Matt, who was an assistant athletic director at the time, was reading about Logan and the family, and he was tearing up, not making it through it. I'm crying.
Yeah.
I just became a father for the first time, I think, earlier that year, and just knowing how devastating that would be for that to happen to our family, and just seeing I don't think there was a dry eye on our team that was standing out there. And to see, we ended up wearing the initials LH on our helmets that year. And for Logan, who had never even put on a Cairn jersey, and that impacted our guys in a way that it's not taking things for granted and being grateful for what we do have. I think it's so easy for us to complain about stuff, and yet they still get to put their cleats on and their glove and go play a game that they love. And knowing that Logan didn't have that opportunity, it inspired our guys, but also his life impacted so many even outside of who people may have thought, just because I know our guys' lives were changed because of that. And one of his good friends, Adam, was on our team. And just seeing the love that was shared from his family and just their willingness to and want to come out there to do that, forever bonded those guys in that group, where Logan is always going to be a part of whatever team I'm a part of, because it teaches me so much about being grateful for what we do have and what God has given us.
Thank you for sharing that. So well put. And Josh Randall was on one of our first episode here on the show, and he spoke a lot about perspective, and Josh was a teammate of Logan's in those years. But yeah, just he's still making an impact today, 6.5 years later. And but just getting to see how you responded to that is just, I think that brought us closer as well, and our friendship. And again, just plugging Messiah University. If you have tons of options, obviously you want to do your due diligence and get to see these campuses and meet these coaches. But it will be very difficult to find a better baseball mind and a better baseball heart and a person than Coach Phil at Messiah University. Thanks for sharing that. And, we're coming to the end of our time, and I want to move us into the Players Want to Know segment, where some players we've chosen a few players that have asked questions for you, and we'll kind of put you on the spot a little bit. So let me just get to my list of questions here. We'll start with a senior for us, Lennox Bray. And Lennox Bray just committed earlier to Lewis and Clark in Oregon, outside of Portland. So he'll be a freshman baseball player next year. And his question for you was, what are the best ways for a freshman to make an impression?
Yeah, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's for me, like I want to see our guys show up to the field with this excitement and joy every day to get to work and to get after it. One of the awesome things that I heard from our guys the other day was at 6 a.m. lifts, and just how everybody showed up to lift, not just rolling in like, all right, I'm going to work hard, but like I'm going to do it spitefully, but showing up with like an energy that, one, made them more prepared mentally to get after it, but also helped push and prepare their teammates more, because it's like positivity and gratefulness and energy, it's contagious. And honestly, energy is contagious negatively too, where it can bring people down. Where, like, for me, to stand out is like how do you impact those around you, even if the ball isn't ever hit to you, or you don't even get in at bat, or maybe you walk on 4 straight pitches that's nowhere close to the zone. Like, what does your energy do to the team? And does it shift the team positively, or does it shift it negatively? And I think sometimes people are like, well, of course, if you hit 600 with 8 home runs in the fall, like, that's going to help your cause. But that doesn't always happen. And sometimes there's neck and neck performances taking place where it's like trying to decide, but what does the team look like in terms of like when you're around them? Do you elevate the team, or do you retract what the team is? And I think that's a huge way for first-year guys to stand out. It's not just to show up like kind of falling in line, but like show up with an attitude of like being positive, knowing like, hey, I might not play this year, but I'm going to show up and like love being here every single day, and I want to be positive to show and make our teammates better too.
And that's also a controllable, which is great about that. You know, you could really choose to have that positive, great energy every day. Sometimes it's harder to do it than others, but you could really control that if your mind is open and willing to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering that, and nice question from Lennox Bray. Now we're going to go with a junior, Lincoln Hardy, junior infielder for us. His question, Coach Phil, how does a Christian college change its sports mentality compared to a non-Christian college?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier this, like Messiah in general. So a lot of our teams do this as well. It's not just baseball, but like our identity is not wrapped up in those national title trophies in the hallway. Yes, are we pursuing that excellence to do that? And truly, we talking about our captain. That's like an awesome way for us to reach more people and point people closer to Jesus. Like, what better way to show like, hey, we care about this, but like that's not what we're focused on. And we were still able to accomplish that. But at the end of the day, that's not what matters most to us. And last year, we ended up breaking the school record for wins, and which was 28. And as we were approaching that record, I didn't even know what the record was until we got to 27, and somebody said, hey, like, we're 2 wins away from breaking the record. And I was like, oh, like I didn't even cross my mind. But then it started to like creep into my, like, oh, we got to win this, we got to do this. And I started caring about the wins more than anything else. And one of the things that popped up was I was talking to one of my mentors from church, and the song like Jesus Over Everything came on, and I actually gave you one of the hoodies that we wear now, like on game days, with this idea that like that is the most important thing for us is how we're representing like Jesus with how we play, how we compete, how we interact with the other team, how to respond to negative situations, and part of that is are we pursuing that excellence in the way we play? Like I think that's sometimes lost in like the Christian culture of sports is like, no, we're still called to pursue that same excellence. Like we're not just going to go out there and not be a talented baseball team. And we're still called to do that, but we're doing it with perspective that at the end of the day, like the outcome isn't what matters most. And for us to do that, it keeps a reminder on what we're doing, where we got to go to the Dominican Republic on a missions trip last year, where that was our purpose. Knowingly going on a missions trip as a baseball team is to point people and share the gospel and point people closer to Jesus. And I kind of asked myself as we were walking away from that of like, why isn't that our same purpose every day? And
totally,
that really like shifted the way we thought about what we did. And I ended up posting a sign like with that Jesus Over Everything on it last year, where more as a reminder for coaches and for myself to not lose sight of our purpose. And it became a reminder for our whole team that it's bigger than this game of baseball. And again, we shared earlier in this podcast, like as believers, we get to be the most fearless athletes out there. Mental toughness is a huge conversation in today's world of sports. But I think the most mentally tough athletes are the ones that don't find their identity in how they perform that day, which gives them the freedom to actually perform at their highest level.
I love that. And you know, I wished all schools would have a similar mentality, but when you put a Christian tag onto the end of a school, you know, an institution, university, high school, I think that, you know, purpose is the process, and outcome is God. Yep. You know, and that's it's just so beautifully put. And Lincoln, thank you so much for asking that. I think that was a great question and something different to the show.
Sure.
Love that. We have time for one more. Coach Phil, This is from senior infielder and pitcher Braden Butler. He would like to know, what is your favorite memory in coaching college baseball?
I love what I get to do every day, so it's hard to pick just one, but for the sake of time and not being here for another 4 hours, I will only pick one that happened this last year. In the course of a season that I think broke 19 school records, like statistically broke the school record for wins, like that yet was not like my most favorite moment. My most favorite moment in showing like just a sense of joy and excitement around playing the game of baseball. And I'll go with like an on the field one because there's many off the field ones that I could go with too. But one of my favorite moments in terms of just like a happiness and joy and just like fun moment was we were in the DR. It was our third game. We played 4 games down there. I think it was our 4th day down there. Our interpreter, Roberse, was a chaplain for the Mariners down in the DR complex for the Mariners, like down there. And so those of you that don't too much about the Dominican, like MLB down in the Dominican, is they each have their own baseball training facilities for Dominican players. Academies, down there for the players and baseball academies. And so we got to go to the Mariners Academy where there were like some of the biggest names in the Mariners like went through there. And we're pulling up to the place and it was a surprise. And like we get there and it's like, this is really awesome. And I realized like we're getting out of the bus, out of our buses in our van and we're supposed to be at the field to play our game in about 5 minutes, and we're just getting out to like go in and tour it, and like we're kind of on island time down there, so
nice.
Time is kind of irrelevant. But then so we get that was awesome, and then we pull up to the field, and as baseball players, we feel like we need to be at the have 3 hours to get prepped and like batting practice for both teams, which I think is necessary at times, but also I think we put too much stock in that sometimes where it's like, we didn't get our perfect amount of swings. Like, I'm messed up for the day. And so we show up to the field. We look at the watch, and, like, the other coach is cool. He's just like, we'll get started here in about 10 minutes. And, like, guys are, like, still in their turfs.
That's awesome.
And we roll up. I was like, all right, guys, get your cleats on. Make a couple throws. Get stretched out. Make sure you're not going to hurt yourself. Hey, Chris, our starting pitcher that day, I was like, you got 20 minutes to get loose because we're you'll get the pitch second at least, so you still got as much time as we have as we hit. And we walk up, our center fielder, our leadoff hitter, steps up to the plate. He's kind of still rushing around trying to find his batting gloves. I think he finally found and got on, gets out there. And first pitch of the game, he hits a moonshot home run to start the game off. And it was just like another reminder of just like we put so much stock in this other things that like sometimes it's just to just have fun and have joy and just go play the game that you love. Like, tell me that if you've played wiffle ball, tell me the last time you went and showed up 2 hours early to get loose. Like, right? Like you didn't.
Yeah, wiffle ball, show and go every time.
And it's just like, if you have to show and go, so what? Like, you still get to play a game that you love and enjoy, and that was a moment that I'll never forget.
And that gives your starting pitcher a few extra minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I think we scored a couple runs in innings, so it ended up working out.
That's so cool. Well, I think what we learned today, we learned so much today about Coach Phil and about the university, Messiah University. We also learned that a belief system, some leadership, and a visit to a tropical baseball island can really change the landscape of a season with the 14-game winning streaks and beating there's now a new school record for wins at 35. Am I correct in that? Mm-hmm. And I hope you're primed to go out there and win 40 next year. Yeah. No pressure. But I'm just so excited to have you on the show. This is our first season of doing this, and it was really neat to have somebody with your experience in the college world. I just want to thank you. You're a great friend. You're a great husband. Continue to be a great family man. Love seeing the videos of the boys. Please keep them coming. You and your wife Courtney just are so blessed to be in that situation, and I'm just so happy for you guys. And of course, just continue killing it out there in the coaching world. I also want to thank Joseph Jasper, our producer, and our athletic prefect Luke Leisengang for just making this podcast possible. We're out of time. Coach Phil, thanks again for being here, man.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks for it's like two friends chatting. So
safe travels home.
Thanks.
This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK through 12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening and stay tuned for more.